Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there tonight. You had yourselves a wonderful day, and I hope everyone has been having a great weekend out there so far. I got you an evening update. I don't think I made a video at night in about two and a half weeks since covering Hurricane Beryl. So here we are. It's full send ahead. Looks like we're going to be doing 2 videos a day for the next, for the foreseeable future, unless we go back in the other direction that we're trending right now, which is potentially for an uptick in tropical activity. So in this video, we're only going to talk about the tropics. So the first thing we'll do is we'll discuss what's going on with this tropical wave right now that's dubbed an area of interest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll give you the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over all the latest model guidance. I'm talking about the European, the latest GFS that's running right now that we'll be able to check out. So we got the latest and greatest information. We'll even take a look at the Canadian model, the ICON model. We'll go over the European ensemble, and then we'll kind of geek out on you a little bit, nerd out a little bit, and to really discuss what could promote this tropical wave to potentially strengthen on down the road. I don't think it's going to happen in like the short-term future, like the next few days or anything. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to happen late next week, maybe even like this time next week. I'm talking about like next weekend, obviously. So we'll discuss the environmental factors that could promote strengthening, because a lot of people, we all know, it's not a thinking here, we all know there's a lot of dust out here, Saharan dust. So that's why we don't think this is going to do anything for, the short-term future. So we're going to discuss all that, and then we'll talk about steering currents. Where does this go if this becomes something we need to really pay attention to? So stay tuned. We'll kind of break it down and take advantage of those timestamps too, folks. They're there to help you if you want to just jump to certain portions of the video. Don't blame you one bit. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it. And not only I can pray over it, but it gives maybe hundreds of other people an opportunity to pray for it too. If it's unspoken, put that. We got you covered. More importantly, God's got you covered. So let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the entire Atlantic Basin. I got cyclonicwx.com up instead of tropical tidbits. I like to switch it up, mix it up a little bit. So this is just a different way to look at the satellite out here. So this is the lower 48, Florida, Cuba, the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico right here. And this is the tropical Atlantic, the MDR, main development region. So if you're wondering, what's the tropical wave we are watching? Well, it's just this little action right here. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't look like much of anything. And I would agree with you. But I don't think it will be much of anything over the next several days. It's if this thing can work its way, survive, more importantly, is what I'm trying to say. Kind of in this direction, south or north of this arrow I just drew, and work its way into this area over the next week or so. This is when this tropical wave right here that just doesn't look very impressive on satellite could have a shot to develop. Okay, and we're going to discuss why it would have a shot to develop later in the video. Okay, but this is what we're watching. Now, I do want to note there is tropical waves behind this, little areas of energy, and we're going to be using the word energy a lot in this video, so stay tuned, but I'll explain what I mean by the term energy when we relate it to the tropics. But we got to watch these areas of energy too, these tropical waves. Like this is a pretty big one coming off the coast, and my face might be blocking it off, but coming off the west coast of Africa here. What's going on is there's a favorable MJO phase. It's still in the Pacific that's going to work its way this way over the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, eventually fully into the Atlantic. And that is going to probably meet up with this tropical energy. Now, this is going to ride down here, not that first area I drew. But so everything could be connecting, if you will. So I really think that we're entering kind of the doorway of a very active period. Now, I don't think it'll get very active immediately, but I think it's just slowly going to uptick throughout the next several days as we get deeper into August. So that's what's going on right now. So at the end of the day, that's what we're watching here. So this is going to be the main talking point in this video. So let's continue to move. Now, this is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Might as well call it the 2 p.m. update Eastern time. It's bumped up to a 20 to a 30% chance to develop in the next 7 days. In this yellow area, and it has the X where that tropical wave is, which is what we just circled on the satellite. And develop means into a depression or a named storm. The next name is Debbie, the D name. So that's the next name. So if this develops, or we got to watch this little piece of energy off the coast of the eastern U.S. over the next couple days too. That could become like a subtropical system, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it is. Okay, but we think that this is something to watch. It has a chance to develop into a depression or a named storm. Now, there's another update that drops here in about an hour. It'll be technically like the 7:30, 8 p.m. Eastern time update. If they do anything, they'll bump this from a 30 to a 40% chance, which would make this area, as you can tell, you see the orange X down here, it'll make this area orange. But I do think there's a possibility they bump it to a 30 to a 40, or they hold off. So that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Now let's go over model guidance. The first thing we're going to do is talk about energy in the low levels of the atmosphere. So this is 850 millibars, 5,000 feet up in the air, about a mile above our heads. And in this case, the fish's heads out here in the ocean. So you're going to just see areas of yellow, some orange. So this is kind of what we really seek and look for in the early stages of really tracking a potential tropical system. And I know this gets kind of probably boring for some people. They're like, man, just tell me if we're going to get hit by a hurricane or not. It's not that easy. If I knew that kind of stuff, I'd be a millionaire because I could predict the future with the weather and probably save millions of lives. But anyways, we're going to start this by looking at the Southwest Atlantic, which I always consider this area, the Caribbean. I'm sorry, this is the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Caribbean. And you see this bigger area of yellow. You see areas of yellow everywhere, but you see this bigger area of yellow right here. That is our tropical wave. This is our energy. Now we're going to keep this moving. This is the latest Euro. We're going to keep this moving. It doesn't change much. I mean, we get into Wednesday. This is the last day of July 31st, next Wednesday. All right. We get into the morning of August 1st. This tropical waves right here could bring some unsettled weather. And I'm going to show you the precipitation map here in a second too. But just want to show you the energy because in the short to medium term of this, it's not going to show up much on the precipitation map. That's why I'm showing you the energy here. But we get into Friday morning, August the 2nd. Okay, this is starting to look more yellowish to oranges, which means this energy is getting stronger. Okay, more compact also. And then if you look at these wind barbs, which you see these little flags here, these are the wind barbs. You see how they're kind of circling now around this area? Okay, now we're starting to get a strengthening tropical wave, maybe into a depression. And this is rumbling over the Bahamas next Saturday morning, a little under 7 days from now. And then it's really starting to strengthen right off the east coast of Florida. And then by the time we get into about 8.5 days out, Monday morning, August the 5th, not this Monday morning, next Monday morning, first Monday of August, we have a tropical cyclone off the coast of the southeast. Storm. This is probably, it looks like it's strengthening into a hurricane right off the coastline of Wilmington, North Carolina, based off the European. Another way to look at this is the precipitation map. Okay, this is the green's gonna show rain. The yellows and the oranges you see, that's heavier rain. So this is why I showed you the Vort map before the precipitation map, because if you look here, all you see is just a blob of green, right? And this is just this coming Wednesday. We get into August 1st, Thursday morning. It's a bigger blob of green, but this is a blob of green too. That's why I show you the Vort map here, okay? And you keep this going. And guys, I mean, we're all the way at next Friday morning. That's why I said at the very beginning of the video that I don't think we're going to get much out of this over the next 3 to 5 days. I really don't. Maybe like 5 to 7 days, okay? It's as we get into next weekend, the Europeans saying, okay, we're going to try to, this is looking like it's strengthening. Okay, so it gets over the Bahamas. It's 1,008 millibar low. And then we get into next Sunday morning, about a week from today. And we got just a bona fide tropical cyclone off the coast of Florida, probably a depression. But look how that number drops. As that number drops more and more, that's a sign of a strengthening storm system. And it starts to drop pretty quick. It goes from like a 996 to a 991 in a 6-hour period. That's a decent rate of intensification. And then it really begins to deep into a sub 970 millibar hurricane 10 days from today. So if this is something we are legitimately going to be tracking, if it continues to increase in model guidance, folks, we'll be tracking this for at least the next 10 days. Okay, so it's going to be barrel. It's going to be a long one if the model guidance continues to show something. Okay, but this is the morning of August the 6th. It has a just about a major hurricane off the coast of the Carolinas. But it's doing that classic turn north, and it looks like it misses. But, of course, this only goes 10 days out. Now, the latest GFS. Okay, I hadn't even seen the complete run of this yet. So because it's running right now, it's still only 216 hours out. All right, so the GFS kind of did away with it at 12Z, but this is 18Z, the latest model. Same thing. We look at energy. This coming a Tuesday evening. All right. Just your yellowish orange color right here. That's your energy in the low levels of the atmosphere. The GFS does exactly what the 12Z GFS does and takes this energy right over the greater Antilles, Hispaniola, areas of Jamaica, eventually over Cuba. And I think because it goes pretty much right over landmass, the higher terrain of Hispaniola, Cuba, this energy would have no chance. Okay? But we do still need to watch the energy if it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. But all in all, the GFS, nada. Nothing. Now we go to the GFS like a couple runs ago. Like this is this morning's GFS run. And it has looks like a tropical storm off the coastline of Cuba. Okay, and we go a little bit further. That is what the GFS showed when we made a video this morning. Okay, that shows next Sunday morning, 8 days from now, a hurricane off the west coast of Florida. Okay, but this is the current run. Nothing. See, we're still getting wild model back and forth. I mean, even if it still showed a hurricane here, for example, if this was the current run, that's still massively different than the European, which has a hurricane on the other side of Florida, off the coast of the southeast. Okay, and if we look at the precipitation map, there ain't really much to see. Just brings a tropical moisture over the Caribbean islands, basically, and then gets into the Gulf of Mexico and just pretty much never does anything. And it's because I think just land interaction, consistent land interaction, it just continues to shred this thing. Now, the European has been on this for a few days now. I would say almost several days now. It's been showing this consistently. I honestly think the main reason the GFS really isn't showing anything at this point is because it never gets the energy going because it interacts with land too much. And it's a little bit further south. The European gets us into the southwest Atlantic, a more favorable environment. Upper wind patterns probably a little bit better. There's no land to interrupt it. GFS carries this right over the Caribbean islands. Now, what about the latest Canadian model? I think it's worth showing all the model guides, comparing it. And I'm not going to show you the energy here. I'm just going to show you the precipitation map. That's our tropical wave right here. You see kind of there's more areas, I would say, of green. That's our wave. And same thing, it kind of carries this south like the GFS. Moves it over the Caribbean islands, but it kind of gets the energy back together south of the kind of the southern coastline of the western areas of Cuba. Okay, to kind of get it back going, starts to turn this into a tropical system into the southeast Gulf of Mexico next Sunday, August the 4th, and then proceeds to strengthen this into a strong hurricane, making landfall next Monday night into Tuesday, okay, into the Gulf states, we'll just say. So the Canadian still showing something significant, but it is massively different as far as where it takes this than the European. Okay, it's in the Gulf of Mexico. The European is off the coast of the southeast. What about the ICON model? Well, the ICON model only goes out 120 hours, but it does have an area of moisture right here. But it only goes out 120 hours till Thursday midday, so it doesn't show much this far out. Now, the European ensemble, remember, this makes up 51 members, and in this case, puts it all on a model output for us, okay? There's other ways to look at it where it kind of combines, it creates an average of the low pressure average and kind of creates one storm. Okay, that's another way you can look at it, or you can look at it like this. It shows all the members that actually form out of the 51. Okay, so that doesn't mean you're going to get, like 30 hurricanes, okay? It's just showing all the members out of the 51 ensemble run from the EPS, okay, the European ensemble. There's a GFS ensemble too. So the European, this is all the way out to the morning of August 3rd. Pretty strong signal for some sort of low pressure. Now, there's some pretty weak ones, like there's a 1010 millibar low, there's a 997 one, but we don't expect this to be very strong at this point. It's once this gets like into this time frame. Okay, this is starting to get into the few days of August. So let's just go on and just take this all the way out through, how far is this out? This is 216 hours out. So this is all the way into August, the morning of August 5th. You got some members getting into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, okay? But most of the members, some of them going to Florida, most of these members are turning north and getting very close to the southeast coastline, and ultimately a lot of them go out to sea, okay? So that's at this point, we just look at the signal for a tropical system. I wouldn't focus too much on steering currents, okay? Now, another thing we can look at here, let's back this up a little bit. This is chances of a tropical storm development on the latest European ensemble, okay? And it has this all the way up to, that's actually, yeah, it has this all the way up to a 50 to 60% chance of a tropical storm developing kind of north of the Bahamas, right here, kind of between August 3rd and August 6th, off the coast of Florida, northern section of the Bahamas, off the coast of the southeast, right here, okay? So this changes a lot. That doesn't mean that there's a 100% chance, that there's a 60% chance of a tropical storm developing. This is just what this particular, it could show something totally different overnight. Okay, so that's all the model information that we have. Now let's talk about and the environmental background that could promote strengthening. And really, we're looking at sea surface temperatures here, not the upper wind pattern. We're going to look at that here in a second. So these are sea surface temperatures. We're not going to harp on this much. We know that we're well above average as far as sea surface temperatures. It's something that's been talked about a ton. If you don't, now you do. Temperatures, it's like rocket fuel for tropical systems out here in late July. Temperatures, I know this is in Celsius, but 29, 30 degrees Celsius is equivalent to like the mid, getting into the upper 80s. 31, 32 degrees Celsius is getting in like the upper 80s, close to 90 in Fahrenheit. So just look at this and say, hey, the sea surface temperatures are well into the 80s, which supports maintaining and strengthening of tropical systems if the other factors are working with it too, like a favorable upper wind pattern, lack of dry air, all of that. So what does this do? Well, this helps to sustain convection. It helps to really promote an environment to get convection, which is shower and storm activity, to get going in these tropical systems. So you can check that off the box. One thing we have not talked about yet with this system, and if you followed during Barrel, we talked about this a lot, is the upper wind pattern. I know you look at this and you're like, man, this looks boring. I don't even want to tune in it. But this is the upper wind pattern. So these are winds about 200 millibars up in the atmosphere, which is way up there, like 30, 40,000 feet up in the air. So we really look at this when we're trying to gauge how much shear is really that these storms are dealing with. We can look at other things too, but I like to look at this. And this will tell us just the direction of the winds way, way up in the air. So what we look for is lack of shear. Okay, so it's going to be hard to find our tropical system on here because it's so weak in the short to medium term. But we're starting Wednesday. Okay, we're getting into Friday. You see this little swirl, little cinnamon bun right here? That is what we call an anticyclone. ULAC for short is the acronym, which stands for Upper Level Anticyclone. Okay, I'm going to explain more of that here in a second. We keep this going. We're going into Saturday morning, going into Saturday evening, next Saturday evening, not right now. And then we'll stop it here. This is like next Saturday night. So it finally pops the L right there on the European ensemble. And that's what we're looking at, right? So in the Northern Hemisphere, these tropical systems spin like this, right? So that is how this will be spinning. This is how this will be rotating, okay? This tropical system in the low levels of the atmosphere, okay? This is a strengthening storm system. Low to mid levels of the atmosphere, this is circulating, it's rotating like this, okay? Cyclonic spin, okay? But if you look at the streamlines above it, you see these arrows right here? Okay? That is the direction the winds are going in the upper levels of the atmosphere. I'm talking about over our tropical system right here. So the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere are going in the opposite direction of the actual cyclonic flow of the tropical system. Okay, so you got a flow on top of this system. Man, that is an ugly arrow. We got a flow on top of the system going like this, right overhead. Okay, so in the low to mid levels of the atmosphere, if there is a tropical system right here, I know a lot of this is speaking in ifs, is going like this, and the upper levels of the atmosphere is going in the opposite direction. So you're probably thinking, well, that probably disrupts the flow, the cyclonic flow of the actual tropical system. Well, it doesn't. Actually, it helps to push air out away from the system, right? That allows for more air to rise. That air gets pushed out because the winds are going in the other direction, right? And then more air rises and then air gets pushed out. So it's basically allowing for almost like a ventilation for these systems. It continues to allow an environment that air is constantly rising because of this anticyclone over the system. Okay, so that basically promotes, if you don't know much about rising and sinking air promotes more convection, shower and storm activity. Sinking air, which is what's dominating most of the Atlantic basin right now, promotes no shower and storm activity, stable conditions. So this basically continuously promotes an environment for tropical activity, convection. So that's why this ultimately strengthens like into this region right into here. Okay, that's why, you know, if you go back and look at the European model, the actual operational model, it's weak, 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 and then it gets right here, and then it begins to strengthen. Okay, now we don't know if this favorable upper wind pattern is going to be right over this system or not. You know, I can tell you on this particular run, it looks like a pretty favorable environment. Another thing you would look at is stuff like dry air. I think dry air is going to plague this system a lot in the short to medium term, because I mean there's so much dusty. I mean, if you live in Florida right now, you know all about it. There's so much dry, dusty air out here, and I think that is going to be the biggest hurting factor of this tropical system, which we hope it is. So I think that this will plague the system until this gets very, very close to the to landmass. But remember, at the same time, okay, at the same time, we have that MJO phase, that favorable MJO phase that's working into this area. And we're going to actually show you this right now. So right now, there's pretty much a sinking air phase, MJO phase, over the Atlantic. Okay, and this is actually technically for like between now and August 3rd. Okay, you see kind of the areas in red. This is more sinking air. You see this area in green, that's more rising air. Now watch as we start to get into like August 3rd through August 10th, okay? That is when we're starting to see a dominating rising air MJO phase moving over. It's really over the Eastern Pacific, but it's starting to get into the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean too. So this will time up well right when this tropical system is moving right into the Southwest Atlantic. That's why I don't think this is going to really get going until a few days into August at least, if it does get going. So the last thing we'll discuss here is steering currents, and this is always a little tricky for me to explain. Sometimes I'm really good at it. Sometimes I'll end the video like, dang, I really butchered that. But what you're looking at here is the 500 millibar pattern. Okay, so the warmer colors you see on your screen, like the salmon color, the orange, red, whatever you want to call it, the pink, that is high pressure. And then the blue you see on your screen, that is low pressure. Okay, and it's going to be hard to see. We're going to start this off Thursday morning, August the 1st. But you see this blob of white here? That is where our tropical wave is. It's not strong by Thursday morning. So it's not going to show up in blue because it's so weak. But of course, we know a tropical system is a low pressure, right? So we're going to look at the European. So why does the European go north, right? Well, if we keep this going, notice it's still not showing up. Finally, if you look really closely, a little area of blue shows up. There's our low pressure starting to show up, means it's strengthening. Okay, so I just want to show you kind of where it is, right? It's right here. But really, it's also right here, okay? It's right into here. You just barely can really see anything. So kind of in the short term, and I'll do an L right here, short to medium term, this is moving kind of more so like this because of this ridge on top of it. So flow around high pressure, goes like this. Okay, and in this case, it's going like that over this. But this is very weak ridging over the Atlantic. It's not very strong. Where you see these kind of darker shades of red right in here and this kind of pinkish color, that is where you have a stronger ridge influence. But this is very weak ridging right here in place. Okay. In fact, it's so weak that this low pressure is able to kind of ride into it. Now the steering currents are slow because this is so weak, and that's another factor, is this thing is going to be pretty slow moving from here to here. It's not going to go fast because you see kind of the lighter shades right here, that red. There's a light ridge. There's a very stagnant airflow over this area. So steering currents are very slow. Now, what I want you to watch is you see this blue area up here on the top of your screen. That is our trough about to dig down and break down this entire ridge influence over areas of Canada and the lower 48. Okay. And you see this other little impulse of energy right here that could open up and kind of break loose this ridge too. So there's a couple things to keep your eye on here, but this will make more sense here in a second. But you keep this moving, you kind of have we'll stop it here. This is the August 3rd, the afternoon of August 3rd. Here comes a big low pressure diving down right into here. This is splitting this ridge, making it flex back out west. This is pushing that way. And we actually have a little upper trough right in here too, which is helping to kind of break down the ridge too, but it's kind of getting double dosed. So this is kind of splitting this area right here. So 2 days prior, where I just showed you where you had all that red over this area, it's now not as much, right? So our tropical system right here, tropical systems, low pressure is always going to try to go poleward, gain latitude. So it's going to try to go north as soon as it feels this weakness that's being created right into here. Our tropical system is going to try to move north at this point. Okay, I'll get all this back off. And check out this wide open weakness at this point. So at this point, you do have a little bit of ridging trying to build around it to the east. But at this point, between that little weak trough that was in place right over the eastern U.S. and this big trough up here, okay, there's a wide open break in the ridge from right here and right here. So this system is sniffing this out and trying to head north. Now on this particular run of the European, it goes more like that, the arrow more to the right here. So that trough that digs down right here is really what breaks loose this ridge, allowing for this tropical system on the European model to go north. So, there was a lot of people thinking that, we're going to have this big kind of ridge right over this entire region. That squiggly line is a ridge, and this was going to force any kind of tropical activity to kind of go right in the Caribbean. Now, it could. The models might be handling this trough wrong, okay? And it might get closer to the coast. And, we're speaking on a bunch of if it happens, right? But, there's a lot to figure out. At the end of the day, that's our tropical system. Trough digs down. Look at the break in the red. Bust that wide open. Then that tropical system begins to head north. Feels that weakness. And then ridging tries to build on top of the system. So if we were to keep this run going, kind of hypothetically here, then, would a ridge try to rebuild on top of this area right here? For example, this is very weak ridging, right? That is a major hurricane on this run of the Euro off the coast of the Carolinas, right? Weak ridging trying to build back on top of the storm. Now, that isn't going to, remember I talked to you about the flow around this ridging kind of going like this, right? Okay, that's the steering currents. All right, that isn't going to just yank this tropical system right into the Carolinas. That's not how this works. When these things gain momentum and they get strong, it's going to take one heck of a strengthening ridge on top of this system, right, to kind of yank it back north instead of like northeast, or maybe like try to yank it back northwest. But you got to watch stuff like that. It's a very interesting thing, and I know this kind of lulls people to sleep, bores people probably. I mean, I get it. But this kind of stuff is very important. So we just got to see. And of course, this is speaking 10 days in the future. We don't even know if we're going to have a tropical system. I mean, this thing might go out like this. Okay. And if you're kind of wondering why, for example, the GFS kind of keeps it, if this would load, come on, man. Well, I guess the internet's just going to move a little bit slow here. I was going to try to pull up the GFS and give you an example. Oh, there it is. If you're kind of wondering why the GFS takes us into the Caribbean, I'll kind of show you why. It's going to be hard to see it, but whatever energy is here, it's very hard to see. Whatever energy is going, it's probably right in here, right? It's so weak that it doesn't even get indicated by any kind of blue, but it's right into here. And there is a weakness too, right into here. And there's that trough that the European shows too. But folks, this is such a weak system where I drew this circle that it's pretty much only feeling kind of lower wind currents. So it's almost just sort of drifting out there because the wind flow is so light. So this is just kind of drifting. It's probably still feeling some light ridging like right into here, right? Because remember the flow is going around this ridge like this. It's probably feeling some sort of flow at the bottom edge of this ridge. And there might be a little bit of a ridge influence here. And that's what's just kind of taking this right over the Greater Antilles. But in general, the GFS does not pull this north as quick as the European. And in general, I mean, this trough just doesn't break this ridge down as fast as the European. On the GFS, it doesn't break it down as fast. So that's one thing. You compare this with the European model and see there's just more of a weakness right in here. So I just kind of went on and on right there at the end, but just kind of get into it, kind of geek out, guys. Just a reminder, and I only had one little snarky comment this morning. I'm going to get them, especially with any kind of new viewers that just aren't used to my style of talking. My videos are very long. I think 99% of people don't care. My videos are very long. If you work your way through the video and you're like, man, he talked way too much, you're probably right. But that's just the way I am. I'm passionate about this. I don't like to jump on here for 8 to 11 minutes and just kind of show you some model runs and not really explain it. I like to explain it. It helps me get better making videos in the future. And I think that it has an opportunity to help you guys as the audience to really understand how all this works, okay? Especially with the tropics. There's so much misleading crap out there. I think you guys know that. So take advantage of those timestamps. It does not hurt my feelings one bit if you jump ahead, even if you're a loyal viewer. It doesn't. That's why I put them there. That's why I spent about 10 minutes after a video putting like crazy timestamps in these videos. So God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful night, and we'll do it all over again tomorrow morning. Talk to you soon.